What does it mean to be broken? Perhaps it's a feeling of hopelessness, falling victim to the pitfalls of depression. Maybe it's a sense of uncertainty, not quite understanding what your purpose in life is, resulting in you feeling lost and angry. Or possibly, it's a feeling of being unworthy of love or friendship, leading to self-isolation. For Surge, it's all of the above. For those unfamiliar, Surge is a recurring antagonist appearing in the IDW Sonic comics. After being subjected to brainwashing, inhumane conditioning, and body augmentation, Surge has found herself with incredible powers, the likes of which many would die for. However, this came at a steep cost, as her past life was wiped from her mind entirely, leaving her clueless to who she was, where she came from, and what she stood for. Not to mention that having her mind toyed with and rewritten numerous times has left her in a state of emotional anguish. Forced to be a pawn in a game that she didn't want to play, Surge decided that the world would be subjected to her chaos. This choice would leave her with no allies other than her friend Kit in a cruel world, and ultimately lead to her breaking point. So join me as we explore this tragic character and break down why I believe that Surge is the most broken character in Sonic. Being subjected to Operation Remaster, which is essentially the Sonic universe's equivalent of Weapon X, Surge underwent painful augmentation to both her mind and body. But thanks to Starline's detailed recordings, we get a glimpse of what this entailed. For most of the beginning stage of Operation Remaster, Surge spent her time asleep in the stasis chamber alongside Kit, and while we don't know anything about her past just yet, it seems very likely that Starline had either forced or deceived Surge into this program. It's possible we'll get more information on this soon, as Clutch promised to tell Surge about who she was in the past. While in stasis, Starline would subject Surge to cybernetic enhancements. This painful procedure would leave her to be nearly indestructible and grant her incredible strength. And while this might sound great at first, things begin to take a turn for the worse. After releasing Surge from the stasis chamber, Starline would expose her to a type of hypnotic therapy. His first step in this would be to wipe her mind entirely and then rewrite her personality. This is one of the most vile and cruel things that a Sonic villain has ever done. Having no tether to her past, Starline would have free reign to mold her mind like clay, and he did just that, replacing her past personality with a deep-seated hatred for Sonic. In their brief time together, Starline in a way became a pseudo-father to Surge, as she had no one else to look up to in her life, at least from what she could remember. And Starline is definitely not someone who you'd want to raise you. Hellbent on showing Eggman his worth, Starline could care less about Surge. To him, she's just a means to an end, a pawn in a larger game. His cruelness wouldn't stop there though, as he also forced Surge and Kit into countless training courses. This training regime isn't your typical feel-good Rocky type montage. No, not at all. This is a lot more like what Hercules had to go through. These two would be put through life and death situations as they battled Scrapniks and fought to stay alive through every trap that Starline threw their way. The mental and physical toll that Surge and Kit had to endure was extreme, and eventually Surge would be pushed to her snapping point. Her rage that she would let loose is very similar to what a child is like when they get angry, although it's way more understandable why she is breaking. I think it's important to note that her emotional outbursts are due to Starline's mind wipe, which inflicted deep psychological trauma, and because of this, Surge is more prone to act out in a childlike manner, where she has very emotional outbursts, or what's commonly referred as a temper tantrum. Even with the pain and mental toll that's been inflicted on her, Starline couldn't care less, and even stated, "No pain, no gain," in regards to the suffering that she's endured. From her origin story alone, we see what a sad state Surge is already in. Not only is she breaking mentally, trying to fill the void of her mind that's been left blank thanks to Starline's tinkering, but she's also very much unloved. The one person who should be looking after her and caring for her only wants to use her to achieve his goals. Her well-being isn't any concern of his, and the only one who cares about Surge was programmed to do so by Starline, making it an artificial friendship, at least initially. Kit's whole personality was designed by Starline in order to protect his greatest asset. Feeling like she has no purpose in life, Surge would only persist to make matters worse for herself. Often, people who are emotionally stunted will lash out in order to gain attention, but because this is a juvenile way to behave, these people end up isolating themselves even further. Surge, rightfully upset with Starline, wants to get back at him for all the torment that he's made her suffer through, but even getting back at Starline alone isn't enough for her. Thanks to her brainwashing and unmended anger, she wants to take down Sonic and his friends. Surge's mental mental state is so convoluted at this point that she truly believes it's her and Kit against the world. This mentality that Surge displays puts her in a state of isolation, where if anything bad happens to her, it's not her fault, it's the world's, putting more of a divide between her and anyone who she could potentially call a friend. Surge has gone through a lot that was out of her control, but instead of blaming Starline and taking accountability for her own actions, she's chosen a route of self-destruction. It's very similar to Anakin's fall in Star Wars. Anakin is another character who is emotionally stunted due to his upbringing. Just like Surge, Anakin is manipulated by someone who sees him as nothing more than a pawn, and when faced with the tough choice to actually take accountability for oneself, they both faltered, which led them down a path of hatred. While Anakin, now Vader, had his mentor in Palpatine, Surge was very much alone after the untimely death of Starline. But what's interesting is that after acquiring the Dynamo Cage, which amplified Surge's powers, as well as her mind, she begins having hallucinations of Starline. I believe that even with her hate of Starline, she still had a connection to him. He was her mentor, and in a way, a father figure to her. His cruelty and training is very similar to that of Kreese from Cobra Kai, and we see the mental toll that a bad father figure can have on you, not to mention the manipulation that can result from it. In her mind, these visions of Starline would reinforce what Surge truly thought of herself, calling her weak, alone, and beaten. He would continue to undermine her for all her shortcomings, exposing us, the readers, to how insecure and self-loathing Surge actually is. The sad thing is, for all we know, Surge could have been an incredibly kind person before Starline's experimentation on her, and we see that there is some longing in her to have friends, real friends who don't want to just use her for their own gains. Even after making enemies of Sonic and his friends, they're still willing to give Surge another shot. But the problem is, you just can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves, and as of now, Surge is just too far gone. There is hope for her yet, and I believe that she's gonna get another shot at redemption before all is said and done. She's a very complex character with a lot of trauma to unpack on her own, but once she does this, then I believe she can truly begin to heal. But let me know what you guys think. Is Surge the most broken character in Sonic? Do you think she'll be able to deal with her trauma and overcome it? And do you even want her to? Maybe you guys prefer her more as a villain with nothing left to lose. Let me know down in the comments. Guys, this is the year of Shadow the Hedgehog. We have a ton of content to look forward to, from Sonic Prime to the Sonic movie and even rumored games. So in order to make sure you keep up with it all, subscribe and check out the video here for more Sonic lore. As always guys, I wish you all the best, take care, peace.